when there was this terrorist attack on a Moscow concert hall in March 2024, in which more than 150 people were massacred, and China was quick to condemn the attack and to use strong language on that attack. But when Pahalgam happened, it took its time to react, and reacted very carefully, cautiously, in a way that it was not implicitly criticizing Pakistan. So today, allowing the reference to Pahalgam in the joint declaration clearly is a concession by China, and it's clear that the Xi Jinping-Modi meeting has softened China's stance on this issue. So clearly, this is some progress, but the bigger issue is, will China now stop shielding Pakistan? Yeah. Because it's been aiding and abetting Pakistan's cross-border terrorism against India for many years. It's not just that China has been blocking UN designation of Pakistan-based terrorist organizations and individuals as global terrorists. It's also been aiding and abetting Pakistan's export of terrorism to India. The issue is, will there be a change in China's attitude toward Pakistan's sponsorship of cross-border terrorism? Because that's what matters. It's not declarations that matter at the end of the day. Even if we accept that the declaration breaks new ground, what matters is whether China will stop aiding and abetting Pakistan's terrorism against India.
Okay, let's take that question to Professor Anuradha Chenoy. The declaration is strong, but is implementation going to be much, much harder than extracting such kind of a declaration?
Yeah, well, look, I think the declaration is strong. I think India has made a point. It has it's gone several steps ahead than in the past in this declaration, especially at a SCO meeting, where both China, Russia is present, and the Pakistanis were present, and very often they've, tried to bypass and try to also accommodate Pakistani views, but this time they have not. So I think it's a step forward, definitely. Of course, behavior matters, but it's evident that China wants to have some reset. The process of resetting relations with India has been initiated. And in that, India is standing firm on two issues that, yes, we would like more development, maybe a SCO bank, which Xi Jinping mentioned. However, their two positions on cross-border terrorism and on the continued process of border de-escalation with China, they stand firm and they will not bend on that. So China will have to accommodate this. And with that, I think the bilateral relations between the two would also proceed. But there is a process. It's not going to happen at one stroke. But I think that process, it seems, at least symbolically, and it signifies in the statement, that process is on even keel. That's my understanding.
So the words have been said, the commitments have been made, the declaration is on the table now. It's a question of actions right now. And I think what Dr. Chelani said is also correct, that some of these sentiments have been echoed before, but ultimately there is this track record of China and Pakistan, and it needs to be seen how this statement actually reflects on the ground. Professor Chenoy, do you believe that this special alignment at the SCO, it is, I think we can all agree, it is no ordinary alignment. The geopolitical circumstances under which they are taking place, give them a special sort of depth that perhaps would not have been there if the last 2 months, did not happen the way they actually played out from Trump's side. So given that, do you think that more can be expected from China's side, and these are not just words in a declaration?
I think so, because there is a different conjuncture now of international situation where Mr. Trump, on the one hand, he's putting pressure on Russia, China, and India, a lot on India, which is very unusual since the last 25 years. And Russia and China have seen that. So this moment is right for them to, have a closer relation. There's no problem with Russia, but with China for sure. And also the fact is that Mr. Trump and the US want to re-enter South Asia. They have hyphenated India and Pakistan. And China is also giving a message to Pakistan that, you're going to be part of a US anti-terrorism grouping again. US is seeking to have relations with the Pakistan army. And I don't think China likes that very much, even though Pakistan is trying to balance the two. So China is giving a message to Pakistan also. But of course, the behavior in the next few years will unfold and it will matter. Sure. But this is a step forward, and there is a conjuncture and there is a possibility where Russia's dream of a Russia-India-China kind of forum, or at least closer engagement, there is a possibility for that. They've been trying this since 1998, and it hasn't really worked because of the India-China differences. But I think earlier, as Veena Sikri said, that 10 consensus points which came out when Wang Yi came, the framework is very unusual and very important. In that also, these steps of de-escalation, sharing of hydrological information, etc., came out. So I think you have to see it holistically. And things seem to be changing and moving. We're not in the same kind of status quo as we were
Professor Chennai, just give me 1 second. I want to go back to Dr. Chelani. Just keep the strike rotating. Where does this leave Washington, Dr. Chelani, given the fact that besides everything else we've discussed, here you've had Vladimir Putin in his SCO speech thanking Prime Minister Modi and India, along with China, for their role in trying to bring an end to the Ukraine war. Whenever you told Americans or American commentators that, New Delhi has also had a bit of a role, we've had our Prime Minister go across to Ukraine, etc., they sort of pushed it aside, saying, India is not a serious player. And of late, we've seen all of these statements about how Russia-Ukraine is India's war. In that context, with Putin saying, thank you for trying to bring an end to this war, what message does it send Washington?
There's a double irony here, Vishnu. The first irony is that the US, which has long quoted India as a vital counterweight to China in the Indo-Pacific region, is now treating India more harshly than China. India faces sky-high tariffs, while China has been given a reprieve by Trump. The second irony is that, as the Alaska summit showed, Trump is seeking to peel Russia away from China. He's seeking to break the Sino-Russian de facto alliance against the US. So he's wooing Putin. He wants to break this unholy Sino-Russian alliance against the US. And the problem here is that while Trump recognizes that punishing Russia drove Russia closer to China, he is now repeating that very mistake with India. By declaring virtually economic war on India, he's accelerating India's effort to mend ties with Beijing. And the irony here is that at a time when the US needs India even more as a counterbalancing force in the Indo-Pacific, he's doing the opposite. While wooing Moscow, he's pushing New Delhi closer to Beijing. And I think, and the other part of it actually is how Trump's own India policy has dramatically changed. In the first term, that was the best period for US-India relations. India-US relations flourished in Trump's first term like they had never before. He gave India pride of place in his Indo-Pacific strategy.
All right, sir, I'm interrupting you for a second because we've got this video which has come in of what happened just a few minutes back of Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi sitting in the car. I think this is Putin's car, and the meeting is taking place apparently in Putin's hotel. So that's it. That is interesting. I believe this is the vehicle that President Putin It's a Russian vehicle, travels in. He often carries that outside with him. But I do now believe that these talks are likely taking place. That important bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin in Tianjin. Shortly after this, we'll expect a statement from the External Affairs Ministry, perhaps not a press conference, before the Prime Minister rushes back. At this stage, it appears that he might be a bit late in his departure because the overall SCO process has gone on a bit longer than expected. But do expect major positive outcomes to actually come out of the meeting with President Putin. You know, Shiv, earlier today, when we started anchoring this with Padmaja hours and hours ago, our expectation was on what might emerge with the Putin-Modi meet. In fact, it's changed completely to what's happened in the SCO. We never really thought that SCO would result in such a strong statement, which it has.
The SCO wasn't meant to be headline number one of the day. Of course, we have to leave some space for the Modi-Putin bilateral that's about to begin. We've got this very excited Russian journalist showing us the beast. I'd be just as excited as him, I'm guessing, if I was standing there right next to the beast as Modi and Putin enter that incredible vehicle to make their way to the bilateral venue. And I understand it's about to begin, but you're right, I completely agree. Who would have thought that the SCO joint statement was going to be as strong as it is, as significant as it is? Wasn't expected. Let's be honest. I think all indications were that even though there is this special coming together and consensus between these three leaders and these three countries, that make up an overwhelming part of the SCO, it wasn't going to be this strong. But the Modi-Putin bilateral is also, in my view, going to throw up something quite big, because you've had the Zelensky phone call with Prime Minister Modi on Saturday. You've got Putin in his comments today. Vishnu and Padmaja say that he appreciates India's efforts as far as the Ukraine war are concerned. And now you've got, on the back of all this bonhomie, the ride in the beast towards the bilateral venue, and then that very important meeting. I don't know how long it's going to go on for, but it's going to be a while. So while we wait for a confirmation on that bilateral starting, let's just listen into some of the important things that have been said today.
अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं, बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें एससीओ रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मिले समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हो गए। हाल ही में हमने पहलगाम में टेररिज्म का बहुत ही घिनौना रूप देखा। यह हमला केवल भारत की अंतरात्मा पर ही आघात नहीं था, यह मानवता में विश्वास रखने वाले हर देश, हर व्यक्ति को खुली चुनौती थी। ऐसे में प्रश्न उठना स्वाभाविक है, क्या कुछ देशों द्वारा आतंकवाद का खुलेआम समर्थन हमें स्वीकार्य हो सकता है? एक्सेलेंसी, हमें स्पष्ट रूप से कहना होगा कि आतंकवाद पर कोई भी डबल स्टैंडर्ड स्वीकार्य नहीं होंगे। हमें मिलकर आतंकवाद का हर रंग में, हर रूप में विरोध करना होगा। ये मानवता के प्रति हमारा दायित्व है। SCO को लेकर भारत की सोच और नीति 3 मुख्य स्तंभों पर आधारित है। SCO, S सिक्योरिटी, C कनेक्टिविटी, O अपॉर्चुनिटी। पहले स्तंभ S यानी सिक्योरिटी के संदर्भ में मैं कहना चाहता हूं कि सुरक्षा, शांति और स्थिरता किसी भी देश के विकास का आधार है। किंतु इस मार्ग में आतंकवाद, अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं, बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें SCO रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया।
Well, joining us now, a very special guest, Berzin Wagmar is with the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS in London. Thanks very much for being with us. How do you see this bonhomie in Tianjin translating into a potential reaction from Washington? Professor Wagmar, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning. Trump has gone and quite frankly dissipated and destroyed what has been a carefully garnered quarter-century relationship between New Delhi and Washington. There's no denying that, but then that's due to the man's capricity and his erraticity, which may just change for the better. Can I come in as a historian, Vishnu, and also say that this is an unfortunate blimp, but you have to look at a 79-year relationship between New Delhi and DC and not think everything has been thrown to the winds. That's point number one. Point number two, Mr. Modi has arrived in Beijing not with many cards in his hand. He has arrived with a reduced majority after the third election, which Peking watchers would only know too well. They will also perceive, along with Putin, as having seen him being humiliated by the West, not Washington, with the tariffs in recent times. There's also Iran in the room, besides Russia, in this anti-Western forum. And also, last time I checked, Xi Jinping never traveled to New Delhi for the G20 summit in September, but Modi made it to Tianjin. So the dynamics of that ought not be lost on those of you who are pretty much in the news industry, looking at images and analyzing every move as such. Then there is the question of this crumb of comfort, which has been given to India by mentioning Pahalgam, given that at the Qingdao Defense Ministers Summit in July, there was no mention, and India took an adamant step of not signing that final communique. So this is just a crumb of comfort thrown. What are the ground realities that post Galwan, 2,000 square kilometers has been captured by China, and the so-called patrolling points which were established between both governments have seen Indian troops locked in within their own patrolling area within the Indian
Professor
side of the
Wagmar,
border, and they're not, let me finish please.
Not true.
And they're not been able to do anything about it.
Professor Wagmar, while I totally understand your point about the challenges that India has faced on the line of actual control between India and China, I've reported every aspect of that story with imagery. There is a certain amount of prudence associated with recognizing that India is not going to win a conventional war against China tomorrow, that trade is important, that it is an important trading partner irrespective of the state of the relationship, whatever it was. And therefore, while India seeks to stabilize the boundary, perhaps it's time to move ahead. Galwan was several years back. Would that not indicate a leadership or a government which is trying to sort of figure out a situation in an international order in deep churn, as opposed to a government which is in denial, allegedly, about what happened in Galwan? I don't think that's the case.
No, moving ahead is no problem at all. I don't wish to be an overt cynic as such, but I'm simply pointing out that there are insurmountable obstacles. And with the passage of time, the Sino-Indian problem we've seen so many rapprochements come and go, and I'm past 50 now. So I wonder how much more will be during my lifetime. I certainly hope I'm proven wrong on that. Then there was the question of trade that you just brought up. The deficit is widened to $99.2 billion. There was a mention of trade with the North-South corridor. And that also, which was mooted in 2000, and this is 2025, Vishnu, it has only seen 2 dry freight runs between Bombay, Nhava Sheva, and St. Petersburg. Nothing much has come of that. And there was just one. Come of that, yeah. And nothing, and I hope something kickstarts with the Madras-Vladivostok Sea Corridor, which did see 1 run recently a few months ago. So there's something to be said for that too. Incidentally, Rosneft, which is nothing but an arm of the Kremlin, wishes to divest from Nayara Energies in Gujarat.
Okay.
Because quite frankly, the Russians are awash in rupees and they don't know how to spend them. That also needs to be factored in.
Yes, so there are plenty of challenges, but incrementally, the hope is that these challenges will be addressed. However, so far, what we've seen since morning is plenty of messaging. What do those images tell us? And this is before the India-Russia bilateral even begins. What are those images, Shiv, and what is the message? Over to you, Shiv.
Okay, let's just take you through the big messages that have come out from perhaps the most important image of the day today. The 3 leaders, Putin, Modi, and Xi Jinping, they've met. That's the most shared image from Tianjin today. So I want to quickly just decode for our viewers what we think, we at NDTV think these images actually mean. There is an unprecedented alignment among India, Russia and China, RIC as it is being called, which is undeniable. But apart from that, let's move to the next one. There is common cause against US hegemony. This is not being said in words, but that does appear to be the message because there is a special quality to this common cause. Let's keep moving. Let's move to the next point. Trump has triggered leaders of half the world's population. These 3 leaders standing together, a conversation which we cannot hear, is an important one. And therefore, what Trump is going to take from it, and we're all waiting to see what that reply is going to be important. Trump has forced India, China to manage their contradictions. We just heard a guest talk about those obvious contradictions and rapprochements in the past. Is it going to be different this time? Indications suggest so. India signals non-alignment is non-negotiable, despite an atmosphere of lecturing, hectoring, hostility, belligerence from the United States. In just the last few weeks, India has emphasized its autonomy, emphasized independence of foreign policy, and emphasized non-alignment being completely non-negotiable. So those are my big takeaways from the images of these 3 big leaders.
Even as you're talking about the messaging being done by India, Shiv, Vishnu, and I would like you to come in on this. The US Embassy in India has just tweeted the partnership between India and United States continues to reach new heights, a defining relationship of the 21st century. This month, we are spotlighting people, progress, and possibilities. Are we reading too much into the timing and the messaging?
I think that's an important statement.
And just before the bilateral between India and Russia.
I think there is an effort in America to fix what Navarro is doing, ruining the relationship. 48 or 72 hours back, there was an American warship in Chennai. They were working with an Indian submarine over there, in the dock at least. That strategic relationship continues. You cannot switch it on and off like that. There's been far too much work in it. If you've got that statement from the US Embassy, I think that's significant because at a time when there has been a sense that America is willing to throw aside the relationship, you've had these hopeless references being made by Peter Navarro, including that Brahmin reference today, utterly unnecessary.
But is it fair to blame only him? He's not the only one. It's not like President Trump has...
to the US government.
And also the US President himself has not been doing his country any favors.
My limited point, Padmaja, is that I think there's an effort to fix it, to try and stabilize it, to come to grips with the fact that this is going deeply south in terms of America's interests as well, and perhaps try and stabilize the scenario, as it were, before there can be some sort of change. It's an issue of trust which was built up. That's gone down the tubes. When it comes back is a larger issue. But I do see that as a significant...
Professor Chenoy, do you think that there is a little, even if belated, effort at trying to mend the damage? And are the noises coming out of SCO responsible for that? Is America now waking up that all the other countries are not the pushovers they had imagined? Ma'am, sorry, I think you're muted.
In the US, there are different factions. There is the one with Trump, which is, putting pressure on India. They believe they've downgraded India strategically. They've hyphenated Pakistan and India all to the chagrin of India. India doesn't like these kind of insults and said it's a dead economy and a series of others. But there is a faction led by others which are critical of what Trump has done. And they've said that India has been a partner for, and we've built this relationship for the past 25 years. Before that, again, there were issues. It's not, that India-US relations have also always been wonderful in the last even 50 years. This is the recent development is just 25 years. So there is a faction which is putting pressure. The deep state is obviously in the US divided on this. But they can see that in this conjuncture, it is a bit late, where India is going to diversify their relations in a much bigger way. Earlier, they were being very restrained within the BRICS, within the SCO, about criticizing US unilateralism. But now that they've felt this stick, they are also leveraging their positions and their relations with Russia and China. In that, everyone has their own agendas, of course. Russia has for a long time, since 1998, spoken of the Russia, India, China, the RIC, which you're mentioning, but it didn't take off precisely because of the India-China issues, which are there and have not all been resolved, though there have been significant steps in this last two or 3 months, where the 24th meeting of the special representatives, the 10-point consensus framework, and similarly, the relations between Russia and India are moving even
Professor Chenoy,
one
I'm just
step
interrupting
further.
you now because we need to take a short break. But what we'd like to do now is to bring you video and images, because there's so much in the imagery today of defining moments at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization session today, the meet. Let's take a look. Over there, Prime Minister Modi, along with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin over there, Bonhomie over there, this image of Putin with Modi, that also. And here you can see Shahbaz Sharif, the Pakistani Prime Minister, entirely ignored on a day in which there's been this very strong statement against terrorism. Again, more imagery of Putin and Modi walking hand in hand. This gesture of peace would be seen all over the world. Then Modi in Putin's vehicle, there's a bilateral talk which is supposed to take place. It may have started already, not entirely sure. But those are some of the defining moments at this SCO session, perhaps the big highlight of which was this very, very firm, very, very strong statement against terrorism with direct mention of Pahalgam. That is of enormous significance to India. All right, well, we're going to take a short break at this stage, and we're going to come back with the very latest on what's happening in Tianjin. Non-stop coverage on NDTV with our team on the ground, Gauri Vivedi and Aditya Rajkol, along with Shiv, Padmaja, and me, Vishnu Shom, over here in the studio. Time for this short break, and when we come back, we'll try and track what's happening in that important meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Will there be updates? There will be soon, because the Prime Minister, in just a couple of hours from now, is scheduled to leave to return home.
हेलो बोलिए मैडम, डब्बा ट्रेडिंग कब से चल रहा है पता है मैडम आपको? हम और आप तो जन्म भी नहीं हुआ था हमारा.
We investigated a shady advisory firm that has spent big bucks on advertising on the front pages of national dailies.
ये आपको बिल्कुल उसका ऐसे हल्का सा भी खौफ नहीं है?
मैडम एक बात को खौफ किस लिए रखना चाहिए ये तो बताओ, कौन सा गलत काम कर रहा हूँ मैं?
After our report, we also saw NSE came out with a cautionary circular to the investors. Market Regulator Securities and Exchange Board of India has also come out with a release talking about the actions that it has taken. Cyber complaint has also been filed against the entities involved in this entire Dabba trading scam.
Rajasthan is history, culture, and much more. And I have been reporting on all things royal for more than 25 years.
The colors, the culture, and the complexities of the Northeast is different from the rest of the country. I have been bringing the Northeast closer to the capital for over 15 years. Madhya Pradesh is the heart of India, and I have been capturing its every beat for over 10 years, covering the corridors of power. What is said, what is left unsaid, and what it actually means for you and me. I have it all covered.
Kashmir is often called paradise on earth, a region that has been in a state of flux from conflict to India's crowning glory. I have been reporting and decoding Jammu and Kashmir for last 3 decades.
When we say we're standing on a piece of history, I really mean it. We're standing on the Indian Navy's newest warship. She's called INS Udaygiri. And the reason why this is a piece of history is because for the first time, the Indian Navy isn't just inducting this particular ship, but 2 ships of this kind. For the first time ever, 2 big warships are being commissioned into service together. Now, if that isn't history, what is? The Indian Navy, an incredible service, a navy that is respected the world over, welcomes these 2 beautiful ships into service today. And we are so honored, Vishnu and I. How lucky are we to have the commanding officers of both those ships standing with us here today? That's right, on Control All Defense, Captain Robin Chakravarti of INS Himgiri and Captain Vikas Sood of INS Udaygiri, the 2 newest warships, the pinnacle of warship construction. Incredibly proud day, Vishnu.
No, I remember, about 25 odd years back, Shiv, I was lucky enough to get on INS Delhi. And she was a stunning warship, still is. But you see that evolution over the decades to something like this, and to think that this design is entirely Indian, it's been built to an Indian requirement. First up, gentlemen, and Commodore, let me ask you first. You must be incredibly proud about this commissioning command. Tell us what that feels like for you.
We're standing on your ship right now.
Yes, so it's an amazing feeling, I would say, because commissioning is like first of its kind. You set the traditions, you set the tone for the next 30 to 40 years of commission time. So it's a great honor that is bestowed on you by the Indian Navy, and a great responsibility that you have to thereafter deliver. And the most special thing that is there is that you are like a father to the entire crew of 250 men under you, whom thereafter you would be leading for the commissioning ceremony, followed by the time of operations ahead. So it's indeed a great feeling, an honor and a proud privilege to be bestowed this opportunity.
Captain Chakravarti, not 1 but 2 warships. That's amazing. Vishnu and I through our careers, have been to many commissionings. Vishnu a few more than me because he's slightly older than me.
He wants to rub that in. Yeah, but that's just a side dig. Carry on with the...
Yeah, but 2 ships is incredible. I mean, that's, tell us why that is so significant. The Indian Navy with its huge expanding responsibilities is hungry for more ships. So getting 2 ships at the same time is a bonus, isn't it, sir?
Yeah, of course. Like you said it yourself, the responsibilities are increasing. Indian Ocean is where the action is happening, and Indian Ocean is going to be the future playground for all the, not just the navies, the nations around the world. And Indian Navy, as the preferred security partner, is very active in this area. Given the responsibility and the large area that is, the number of assets is required, and that's the reason we are getting these warships. They're not just numbers. It's not just the quantity; it's the quality of these warships also, because they have high speed and they have got very large endurance, and they can stay out at sea for long times. The frigates are very versatile ships to be. And so these two warships are going to add a punch, not just to the Eastern Naval Command, in particular, of course, Eastern Naval Command, but to the Indian Navy in general.
The biggest Modi visit in 7 years.
So the big breaking news coming in from Tianjin, meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin has begun. The bilateral, which the entire world is going to be looking at. The pictures before this bilateral, the importance of those not lost on anyone, the fact that there have been warm hugs, handshakes, clasping of hands, and then of course both the leaders riding together for the bilateral venue. Vishnu.
So that meeting has started, as Padma just mentioned now. It should go on for a little while. These would largely be prepared positions on both sides. There isn't much to disagree on between India and Russia. Will there be any major announcements, for example, defense deals? Will there be some statements on the import of oil? I think very significantly, just ahead of this meeting actually starting, there's been this fascinating tweet which has actually come in from the US Embassy. You heard me right, the US Embassy, where they are calling for they're talking up the relationship between India and the United States. This at a time when Peter Navarro, the advisor to President Trump, has been making all sorts of references in Washington to Brahmins and oil import, deeply problematic statements going on and on about calling India a laundromat for Russian oil. Things which would be unacceptable for India. But here you've got the Indian embassy, the US embassy rather, in New Delhi, talking up the relationship and saying that, whether it's defense, whether it's other areas, it is a relationship to really look up to. The timing of this not lost on anyone. Padmaja?
Absolutely. In fact, this meeting is going to be key. This was supposed to be the centerpiece, the bilateral that Prime Minister Modi holds with Chinese President Xi Jinping. By all accounts, was quite a success, given that there was explicit statement made on cross-border terror, that action must be taken against it, on the fact that there needs to be peace on the border, on the fact that the trade gap between India and China needs to be shrunk. So all of that happened when the bilateral between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi happened. And now you've got this other big meeting. I think these are live images that we are getting of both of the leaders. All right, it's been a while now because we already have new images as well. Maybe we could play those out. There are fresh pictures which have come in of both the leaders heading into the venue for the bilaterals. We'll try and get Gauri Dwivedi and Aditya Raj call on this as well. But unmistakable messaging is that we are on the same plane. Remember, and everyone needs to keep in mind that what does America want at this point? It wants to push India to the wall. Any sign of nervousness, there's absolutely nothing that is betrayed in the pictures that we've seen so far, Vishnu. This is not a country which is, supposedly under siege from America. This is a self-assured country which is going to hold talks on its own terms. Vishnu.
Yeah, and again, I just want to refer briefly. All right, we've got these pictures coming up of Prime Minister Modi in the hotel of President Putin. They got off Putin's vehicle, and so these bilateral talks presumably have started. In fact, they have just a little while back. These are the first images coming in of the two leaders entering the hotel. And I should mention, because the timing of this is not lost to anyone, the US Embassy in Delhi has now issued a statement. The partnership between the United States and India continues to reach new heights, a defining relationship of the 21st century. This month, we're spotlighting the people, progress, and possibilities driving us forward from innovation and entrepreneurship to defense and bilateral ties. It's the enduring friendship between our two peoples that fuels this journey. Follow the hashtag and be a part of. So they've got a hashtag out as well.
Very kind words, coming as it does from America for a dead economy.
Day when Peter Navarro, said all of this, I do believe this is an important statement, because there must be recognition at some level in the US Foreign Office.
Well, better late than never, because all this while you've told us that,
stabilized.
And since we're speaking
Navarro needs to stop talking.
Yes, and a few others as well in the Trump administration, including perhaps the US president, who, remember, has called us a dead economy, said that both of us, Russia and India, can take our respective dead economies down together. But here, look at these two leaders. Look at their body language. And this is pretty much an echo, a reflection of what we've seen through the morning as well. There have been, and this has to be premeditated, right, Vishnu? I mean, this has to be calculated, that you want to show that you are not dragging us down. If you think that you are going to constantly berate, bully, or almost gaslight, because like we said, it's not been Peter Navarro only, it's been the US president himself. You've got Senator Lindsey Graham, who 2 days ago said that, every time there is news of casualties in Ukraine, he will put out a tweet saying 17 people have been killed. I hope India is feeling good. Why will India feel good? If anything, 3 days after that, you had, Vladimir Zelensky calling up India and saying, we know that you want peace, and we know that you will have a very important part to play in ensuring that peace is eventually brought about. And here are both of those leaders on your screens right now.
And guess what? They're going to be talking extensively about Ukraine. Just a couple of hours earlier, not too many hours, an hour or so, in his address to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, President Putin actually thanked India and also thanked China for trying to bring an end to the war, or in between Russia and Ukraine, calling for an end to the war. So again, that's a signal to Washington. Mr. Trump, you may be interested in bringing an end to the war, but you aren't the only person. There are others who've actually had a significant role as well. And do expect entirely, given the fact that Volodymyr Zelensky did speak to Prime Minister Modi, I believe on Saturday, that conversation would also likely come up. So I do expect there to be some references to this part of the relationship, the Ukraine situation, the war over there, which India wants to put an end to, as indeed pretty much all of the world. Will Vladimir Putin accept India or continue to see India as a serious player in this? We can also expect to see statements on the continued import of Russian oil. India shows absolutely no signs of bringing an end to that. More footage now coming in of earlier on today of Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi. They walked into the SCO summit meeting together, but that was earlier. This is the bilateral. This is the bilateral which is taking place. The Russian Foreign Minister, Mr. Lavrov, sitting right next to President Putin. Do we have sound? Let's listen in.
आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी, साथियों, आपसे मिलकर हमें बड़ी खुशी हो रही है.
Символично, что она проходит на полях саммита ШОС.
ये बहुत प्रतिमात्मक है कि वो SCO शिखर सम्मेलन से इतर हो रही है.
Организация, которая позволяет объединять усилия глав государств глобального Юга и Востока.
ये एक संगठन है जो ग्लोबल साउथ और ईस्ट के देशों के नेताओं को प्रयास मिलाने को एक मंच प्रदान करता है.
Усилия по созданию в Евразии архитектуры равной и неделимой безопасности.
यूरेशिया में समान और अविभाज्य सिक्योरिटी ढांचे को बनाने के लिए प्रयासों के लिए एक मंच प्रदान करता है.
Уважаемый господин премьер-министр, дорогой друг, 21 декабря исполняется 15 лет со дня принятия совместного заявления, в котором отмечен выход наших отношений на уровень особого привилегированного стратегического партнерства.
महामहिम प्रधानमंत्री जी प्रिय दोस्त 21 दिसंबर को 15 साल पूरे हो जाएंगे जब से एक संयुक्त वक्तव्य पर हस्ताक्षर किए गए थे जिसमें हमारे स्पेशल प्रिविलेज्ड पार्टनरशिप पर किस तरह हम पहुंचे 15 साल हो गए.
И можно уверенно констатировать, что многоплановые российско-индийские связи активно развиваются на этих принципах.
और हम ये सच्चाई से बता सकते हैं कि हमारे रिश्ते इस सिद्धांतों पर बढ़ते हैं.
Налажено многоуровневое взаимодействие.
हमारे बीच बहुत बहुमुखी सहयोग चालू है.
Торгово-экономическая кооперация в целом демонстрирует положительную динамику.
व्यापार में सकारात्मक गतिशीलता देखने को मिलती है.
Развивается туристический обмен.
पर्यटकों का आदान-प्रदान विकसित हो रहा है.
Мы тесно координируем наши усилия на международной арене.
अंतर्राष्ट्रीय मंच पर हम हमारे प्रयासों को समन्वय से करते हैं.
Это ООН, БРИКС, Группа 20 и, разумеется, ШОС.
UN, BRICS, SCO जरूर इन संगठनों में से शामिल हैं.
И сегодня хорошая возможность обсудить основные задачи дальнейшего развития многопланового двустороннего сотрудничества в различных областях.
और आज की मुलाकात से हमारे रिश्तों को आगे बढ़ाने पर रास्तों पर बातचीत करने का एक बहुत अच्छा मौका मिलता है.
Уважаемый господин премьер-министр, дорогой друг, Россия и Индия поддерживают десятилетиями особые отношения, дружеские, доверительные. Это фундамент для развития наших отношений в будущем.
आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री जी प्रिय दोस्त रूस और भारत के बीच बहुत विश्वसनीय रिश्ते बने हुए हैं. इस सिद्धांतों पर वे विकसित हो रहे हैं.
И эти отношения носят абсолютно внепартийный характер, поддерживаются подавляющим большинством народов наших стран.
और ये किसी से पार्टी या राजनीति पर आधारित नहीं है. लोग हमारे दो देशों के लोग इस रिश्तों का समर्थन करते हैं.
Спасибо.
धन्यवाद.
आपसे मिलकर बहुत खुशी हो रही है और मैं हमेशा अनुभव करता हूँ कि आपको मिलना मतलब एक यादगार मीटिंग भी होती है. बहुत सी चीज़ों की जानकारियों का आदान प्रदान करने का अवसर मिलता है.
Ваше превосходительство, дорогой друг, очень рад вас видеть. И каждый раз, когда я с вами встречаюсь, у меня бывают особые чувства и ощущения, и это дает нам возможность регулярно обмениваться мнениями по разным вопросам.
हम लगातार संपर्क में रहे हैं. दोनों पक्षों के बीच नियमित रूप से कई उच्च स्तरीय बैठकें भी हुई है. इस वर्ष दिसंबर में हमारी 23वीं समिट के लिए 140 करोड़ भारतीय उत्सुकतापूर्वक आपका इंतजार कर रहे हैं.
Мы постоянно находимся в контакте, проводятся регулярные встречи на высоком уровне между двумя странами. В декабре текущего года 1 миллиард и 400 миллионов индийцев с нетерпением вас ждут в Индии для нашего 23-го по счету ежегодного саммита между нашими странами.
एक्सेलेंसी, ये हमारे स्पेशल एंड प्रिविलेज स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप की गहराई और व्यापकता का परिचायक है. कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं. हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है.
Уважаемый господин президент, это свидетельствует о том, насколько глубоким и всеобъемлющим является наше особо привилегированное и стратегическое партнерство. Даже при самых тяжелых обстоятельствах Индия и Россия всегда шли вперед, плечом к плечу. Наше тесное сотрудничество имеет значение не только для народов наших двух стран, но и для обеспечения глобального мира, стабильности и процветания.
एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं. हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं. हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे. संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा. ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है। एक्सेलेंसी, एक बार फिर आपका मैं हृदय से बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूँ।
Уважаемый господин президент, по теме продолжающегося конфликта на Украине мы регулярно обмениваемся мнениями. Мы приветствуем все недавно предложенные усилия для установления мира и надеемся, что все стороны будут подходить к этому вопросу конструктивно. Необходимо искать пути для скорейшего завершения конфликта и установления мира. Это и есть призыв всего человечества. Ваше превосходительство, дорогой друг, еще раз большое спасибо. Очень рад вас видеть.
Спасибо. धन्यवाद.
В Евразии архитектура рамы и неделимой безопасности.
And that's the big bilateral meet beginning between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Tianjin in China. This is that photo op moment that we had been waiting for. Both Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi starting with their opening remarks there before the bilateral meeting. A very significant, important meeting coming at a time when the US has tried to double down on India with their tariffs. But you can see clearly with the opening statements by the two big leaders that the friendship is intact, their strategic ties will remain intact, and these are two partners, traditional allies who go back decades. You're watching Breaking Ground with me, Vedika. This is our top story all day today. The SCO meet, the bilaterals that are happening, and the significance and symbolism of it all. But before we go ahead and introduce our guest and reporter, let's just go through what message both Vladimir Putin and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi are trying to send out, not only to their countries, but to the world. Firstly, of course, this comes at a time when the US tariffs have hit India 2 times over. It's 50% now, as you know. They're showing the warmth despite what is happening around them. Along with that, the bonhomie, of course, disregards what US Donald Trump has been saying along with his team, be it Navarro, be it the others. We're going to put out some graphics for you now to also tell you what this really means for India and for Putin. This also shows that this relationship really is bulletproof between the two countries. India has displayed that it made the right call, putting its trust in Russia. Remember, US remains unpredictable at this point in time, given all that has been happening, all the rhetoric that has been coming from the two nations. And while the US tried to meddle with Indo-Russia ties, the display of unity is for all to see, especially the US President Donald Trump. Aditya now joins me live from Tianjin. He's been following all the details, updates he's been sending us from there. Also, we will be joined live by Dr. Andreas Umlund, Analyst, Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies in the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Aditya, this is one moment. It was all building up to unexpected moment, really, Aditya, when we saw the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well as the Russian President in that car, the ride really to the venue, and now the opening statements have happened. What's on the agenda? They've made it clear that they're traditional allies. They have very close ties, but come down to business now. What are we expecting in the next 40-45 minutes between the two leaders and their teams?
Well, Vedika, quite incredible visuals, isn't it? Nobody had expected Putin and Modi to ride in the same vehicle because there was paucity of time. And that's why Putin suggested that Modi accompany him in his own car to the bilateral hotel. And that's where the bilateral has just begun. We heard the opening remarks by both Prime Minister Narendra Modi and, of course, the Russian President Putin. This comes at a time when 36 hours ago, Zelensky made a phone call to Modi asking him to convince Putin to come on the dialogue table for a ceasefire for long-lasting peace. Remember, over the last 6 months, there has been a lot of speculation. Donald Trump, in fact, the US president, came on this plank that he will restore peace between Russia and Ukraine. It's been 3.5 years, but there's no sign of peace. There have been several rounds of negotiations that have taken place with Steve Witkoff also traveling all across to Moscow and Kyiv. But US foreign policy clearly not able to achieve that peace. And that's why both Ukraine and Russia are now looking towards Prime Minister Modi and India for that balancing factor, neutrality clearly playing a significant role here. And apart from the Ukraine crisis, this also comes at a time when US tariffs have been slapped against India, 50% tariffs already, and that too, India being a strategic ally of US, doesn't really sound that great. And of course, at the same time, the kind of rhetoric that's coming in from the US side, very, fierce barbs at New Delhi, at Prime Minister Modi, attacks by, attack dogs like Navarro, who are, bringing in Indian caste and Brahmins, etc. That clearly is to provoke Indians. That clearly is to provoke Indian government. But India has stood its stance. India is saying that if it will continue to trade with Russia, the trade will not end. And at the same time, Vedika, the defense cooperation will be taken to another level. The trade will continue. Russian oil will continue to come to New Delhi. And there's no stopping on that. India will continue to pursue its national interests.
Aditya, I'm going to keep you here for the next half an hour, 45 minutes, so don't go anywhere. Before I come back to you, I'm going to go to our guest this afternoon. Dr. Andreas Umland is with us. Dr. Umland, I want to understand from you, was the SCO meet as significant as these images that you're seeing at a time when US has doubled down on India with their tariff announcement? What you see on your screens are two leaders from two countries, two largest countries, of course, China also being the third, in that car, going on that ride, getting into the venue, promising that they will be strategic partners, promising close ties between them. Is the US watching closely?
Well, what first comes to my mind is the even more friendly meeting that Putin recently had with Donald Trump in Alaska. They were also driving in the presidential limousine, and there were lots of signs of friendship, and Trump has a close relationship with Putin from his first presidency, and they are talking all the time on telephone. So this juxtaposition here between the US and Russia doesn't make really sense for me, because in the last half year, the US has done a lot of pro-Russian moves. It has voted with Russia together in the United Nations. It has stopped military aid. It's still selling weapons to Ukraine, but it's not delivering military aid anymore. And it's taken often a pro-Russian position in this war. And so this is all a bit surprising to me. One also has to keep in mind that Ukraine is a former colony of Russia, and Russia's war is a neo-colonial and neo-imperial war against Ukraine. And against this background, this friendly relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin looks a bit odd from my perspective, at least, or from a Ukrainian perspective, I'm sure as well.
But Dr. Umland, is there also not a dichotomy there? Like you mentioned, you had the US president meeting with Putin, but what has happened with India in terms of tariffs, wouldn't that just organically just push India closer in terms of at least, the symbolicness of it all towards Russia, especially at a SCO summit? It's not that the SCO summit was announced after the tariffs. We knew the SCO summit was coming up, but these images coming from there, even more powerful than it would be had US President Trump not announced the tariffs.
Well, the tariffs are global. And for instance, the European Union also is now suffering from tariffs, but that does not mean that the European Union is moving closer to Russia. On the contrary, there is now the conflict between Europe and Russia is increasing because of the war, because of child deportations, because of mass torture of prisoners of war, because of bombardments of apartment buildings, of hospitals, of universities, of schools in Ukraine. This sort of plus minus back and forth doesn't make sense to me. Yes, Trump has a very bizarre foreign economic policy.
Yes.
But why does that mean that one has to de facto support a neo-imperial, neo-colonial war with lots of signs of genocide against Ukraine? I mean,
but Dr. Umland, let me just interrupt there, because Russia's been a traditional ally to India. It's been there when the US has not. When US let India down, Russia stood by it. And that is a tie between the two countries that has remained. I'm going to come back to you in a moment from now. Going back to Aditya. Aditya, I want to understand even the atmospherics around you right now. How is the international media looking at this? You have, of course, people from all across the world, journalists where you are. But what's been the buzz? What's been the conversation around this one meeting that we're seeing on our screens?
Well, when we landed here, Vedika, the entire mood was around the SCO summit. The mood was around what will SCO summit really achieve. There were streets that were empty because obviously people were not there. There are VIP movements that were taking place. But currently, if you go through the Chinese newspapers today, the front page is the family photo of the SCO. But the anchor of that front page is about Prime Minister Modi meeting Xi Jinping. So the reset of the ties, or at least the beginning of the reset of the ties between India and China, is predominantly, big in the Chinese media, in the international media also. I've had conversations with American journalists and French journalists who are also keeping a very close watch on the Modi-Putin bilateral because of the Ukraine angle and the Trump tariff angle. So they will be monitoring that very closely as well. We are here at the SCO venue. This is the International Media Center. Just meters away from here is the hotel where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is meeting Russian President Vladimir Putin. Very important conversations on trade, on bilateral ties, and on the Ukraine crisis as well. You heard the Prime Minister there. That Prime Minister has said that this is not an era of war. Solutions cannot be found in the battlefield. And this is the time that there needs to be peace restored in Ukraine, and the end of the war needs to be achieved. So very important statements by the Prime Minister. Let's also remember that Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, is all set to visit India later this year as well for the annual meeting that really takes place. That is going to be a big diplomatic huddle in New Delhi. Apart from that, I'm pretty sure that the White House would be monitoring the developments very closely. And if not Trump on Truth Social, we would certainly hear Navarro speak about the Modi-Putin meeting, because this is not that they really have wanted all this while.
We're going to talk about Navarro at the top of 1 p.m. as well, Aditya. I'll pull you in then as well. But a huge diplomatic win for India as well. We'll come to that when it comes to the declaration. But another striking image, Aditya, from Tianjin, where you are, where you're witnessing all of this unravel, is the Chinese president, the Russian president, and the Indian Prime Minister in a huddle together. Like I said, it's not that the announcement of the SCO summit came after the announcement of the tariffs by Donald Trump. But if it's not the SCO summit per se, Aditya, that they will be looking at from the White House, these images should unsettle them to a certain extent.
Trump's tariffs have really speeded up the entire process of diplomatic ties between India and China. We certainly need to thank Trump for that. But at the same time, the Troika, India, Russia, and China coming together, unprecedented. There hasn't been a formal meeting, certainly, but who knows? In the coming days, in the weeks, this could be a reality, because this is a message from the platform of the SCO on the sidelines that we clearly see that at the very beginning of the SCO plenary, even before the family photo is taken, Modi, Xi Jinping, and Putin come together. They have a friendly banter. It's a message to Trump that these nations stand together. They are economic powerhouses. They are resilient powers. They have a great population, which clearly knows how democracy functions, knows how, economy functions, and are all for free connectivity and for security cooperation. But American policy has shifted over the last few months. There have been drastic tariffs that have been imposed, especially on India, 50% tariffs and then penalty as well, and very racist and obnoxious comments coming in from the White House as well. But this image of Trump, of Modi, Xi Jinping, and of course Putin coming together is unprecedented. On the other hand, the SCO declaration spoke against terrorism. We also saw Shehbaz Sharif standing alone there, his hands tied, looking helplessly as to what to do diplomatically. But he doesn't have any friends out there. Even though he's in a friendly country, he calls China an iron brother. At the same time, Vedika, Shehbaz Sharif was isolated. At a time when he was standing alone, Putin and Modi, hand in hand, smiling, walked past, clearly indicating who really is calling the shots here at the SCO. So a big message here from the SCO to the Western parts.
Stay with me, Dr. Amlan and Aditya. Another point, Aditya, which I will come to in a while, but I want to make right now, is also that huge show of strength by Xi Jinping in a day or two, where the Pakistani Prime Minister has also been invited. We'll talk about that in a moment from now, because, of course, while India and China are on the talking table, there are, of course, other diplomatic maneuvers happening with the Chinese president and the Pakistani Prime Minister. But the big takeaway also from this SCO summit is a huge diplomatic win for India at this summit, shortly after Prime Minister Narendra Modi stressed that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization member states must say in one voice the double standards on terrorism are unacceptable. The regional bloc mentioned that the Pahalgam terror attack and they condemned the terror attack, echoing India's stand in the summit declaration. Now, diplomatically, this, like I said, is a massive win for India, especially because Pakistan, which has long backed terror on Indian soil, is a member of the bloc, and its Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, like Aditya just mentioned, is attending this summit. Now, the member states strongly condemned the terrorist attack in Pahalgam, which left 26 innocents dead, and expressed their quote-unquote deepest sympathy and condolences to the families of the dead and wounded. The members further said perpetrators, organizers and sponsors of such attacks must be brought to justice. The member states also stressed that attempts to use terrorists, separatists and extremist groups for mercenary purposes is not acceptable. Let's listen in to the statements made by the Indian Prime Minister ahead of that declaration.
अलगाववाद और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां हैं। आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें SCO रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने जॉइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल-कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मिले समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हो गए। हाल ही में हमने पहलगाम में टेररिज्म का बहुत ही घिनौना रूप देखा। यह हमला केवल भारत की अंतरात्मा पर ही आघात नहीं था, यह मानवता में विश्वास रखने वाले हर देश, हर व्यक्ति को खुली चुनौती थी। ऐसे में प्रश्न उठना स्वाभाविक है, क्या कुछ देशों द्वारा आतंकवाद का खुलेआम समर्थन हमें स्वीकार्य हो सकता है? एक्सेलेंसी, हमें स्पष्ट रूप से और एक स्वर में कहना होगा कि आतंकवाद पर कोई भी डबल स्टैंडर्ड स्वीकार्य नहीं होंगे। हमें मिलकर आतंकवाद का हर रंग में, हर रूप में विरोध करना होगा। ये मानवता के प्रति हमारा दायित्व है।
All right, a quick recap before we go back to our guest and Aditya, who's on the ground. Why is this a big win for India? Because SCO members condemned the Pahalgam attack that saw civilians being brutally killed. Let's move to the next page of this. SCO reaffirms commitment against terrorism. This at a time when you had the Pakistani Prime Minister in that room on that table. Also, SCO member states have said use of terrorism by nations is unacceptable. That, of course, is also a controversial point, which I'll get to in a moment from now. SCO calls out double standards in fight against terror as well. Can we go to the next page of this as well? International community must combat terror. Big points coming out in terms of that declaration. Must fight cross-border terror movements as well is another part of that statement. Aditya and Dr. Amlin still with me. Aditya, I'm going to come to you first. This is a big diplomatic win for India, especially because Pakistan, which has long backed terror on Indian soil, is a member of the bloc, and its Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is in attendance.
Well, honestly, Vedika, nobody had expected this to happen in such a fashion. Everybody knew that terrorism would be condemned as a matter of policy from the SCO. But to mention Pahalgam, to mention the attack that took place in April this year, where 26 innocent tourists were killed by Pakistani terrorists of Lashkar-e-Toiba and TRF, and everybody knows, it's a common knowledge that Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir and Pakistan Army were the conspirators of this terror attack. India has exposed and shamed them globally, and that led to Operation Sindoor as well, where China came to the aid of Pakistan with equipment, with latest technology, with intelligence. But even though that happened, China did not object to the mention of Pahalgam this time around. You would remember, Vedika, also that a couple of weeks ago, India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh was in China, and at that particular time, there was no consensus. Pahalgam was not part of the main text of the declaration. But now, within 2 weeks, a game-changer statement, Indian diplomats prevailing over the final joint declaration here at the Tianjin final declaration, and terrorism is being condemned. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also very vociferously spoke against terrorism in presence of the Pakistani Prime Minister, saying that terrorism cannot be tolerated. Every country needs to stand together. So China also bringing in a paradigm shift in their policy. Earlier, they used to aid and abet Pakistan in a great way. This time around, at least on the position of terrorism, they have stood with India.
Dr. Amlin, coming to you now, how do you see this really, everything that's unraveling and playing out at Tianjin right now? On one hand, you have this declaration we're talking about condemning terror and cross-border terrorism. But like I referred to earlier, you also have Xi Jinping inviting the Pakistani Prime Minister to that huge show of strength that's going to happen in a few days from now.
I don't know about the Pakistani and Chinese relations, but from a Ukrainian point of view, this declaration against terror looks almost like a joke, because what Ukraine is experiencing every day is a large-scale terror against its civilian population with Russian drones, Russian cruise missiles, Russian rockets. As I mentioned already, civilian buildings, including hospitals, kindergartens, and so on being targeted. Recently, the EU delegation was targeted. The Azerbaijani embassy in Kiev was targeted. So terror is in Ukraine an everyday reality from Russia's side, and that Russia is now signing these sort of declarations really sounds like a big joke.
All right, do stay with me. Aditya, coming back to you from now. After this bilateral meeting, what are we expecting next? We do know that the Prime Minister will be departing for India soon. But in terms of optics, there have been enough really since the beginning of the day. Today, we've been busy reporting on all of it. A lot of symbolism, a lot of significance. Take us through it all.
Well, it is much delayed because the plenary meeting continued for a while. And then the bilateral between Putin and Modi also is continuing. It's expected that it will take place at least for an hour. We only have had only first 30 minutes of that particular meeting. So Prime Minister had to enplane for New Delhi at around 1:40 p.m. local time. We were already close to 2 hours delayed post that. So we'll have to wait and watch how things unfold. But what I can tell you is that post the Modi-Putin bilateral, we'll have a statement from the Russian side, which will be mostly a text statement, but we'll also have a statement from the Indian Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, who will be releasing a video. Instead of a press conference, because of the paucity of time, there might be a video that Vikram Misri might be releasing to give details both of the plenary session that happened, Prime Minister's robust comments, not just against terrorism, but also strengthening the SCO, which he defined as security, connectivity, and opportunity. And that's what the SCO needs to work on. That was India's mantra at the SCO. So we are waiting for the bilateral to end to know more details on the Ukraine crisis, talks between Modi and Putin on Ukraine, and of course on Donald Trump's theatrics and threats against India in the recent days.
And Aditya, this comes at a time when just yesterday Zelensky had a talk, or I might get the timeline wrong, but they had a talk also, Indian Prime Minister and Zelensky, over Russia, over Ukraine, and then you have this bilateral meeting. So, of course, we have Ukraine also watching this bilat very closely. It comes at a time when Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in no uncertain terms, has said, we'll do all that we can for peace in that region.
I think India is the only country since the last 3.5 years, Vedika, which has maintained that this is not an era of war and solutions cannot be found in the battlefield. That's been the mantra even of the G20 that happened in 2023 as Bharat Mandapam in New Delhi, where a historic consensus was achieved on Russia-Ukraine. But a lot of water has flown down the river since. There's been a lot of violence. There's been a lot of aggression. So we'll have to wait and watch when and how that peace agreement and settlement really is. But India has maintained steadfast and good relations both with Russia and Ukraine. We have historical ties with Russia. Putin and Modi have a kind of a bonhomie. And now Zelensky also reaching out to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So we'll have to wait and watch what kind of a message will Prime Minister Modi give to Putin. In the initial remarks, he did say that he expects peace in Ukraine. He expects the war to be over. But there is much more technicality that is involved here as well. There's also exposes in many ways, Vedika, the failure of the Trump administration's policy on bringing peace in Ukraine. They had the Alaska summit in the last 6 months. There have been a lot of commitments made on the peace, but not much has been achieved so far. There could be a possibility of Zelensky and Putin meeting, or perhaps Trump, Zelensky and Putin meeting. As of now, the Russian side is rejecting all those speculations. So clearly a lot yet to happen. But incredible that Zelensky has reached out to Modi with an SOS call to convince Putin to come on the dialogue table for peace. And now Putin has also expressed that Modi has played an incredible role. He has been keeping Modi abreast with the latest on the peace process. And we perhaps could see a situation where there could be a paradigm shift in this war situation, and we would be walking towards a path of peace. We are waiting for that bilateral to end, and perhaps after that we'll get the latest and, of course, the Foreign Secretary's version of the way things unfolded all day today.
Let's now talk about the three leaders in that one frame, Russia, China and India, the world's three largest countries and their leaders in that one frame together at the SCO meet. We're going to put out visuals of that in a moment from now of the Troika. And this comes at a time when India has shown that even though there are US tariffs that are doubling down on them, they will continue to be in those huddles. Well, of course, there are a lot of issues geopolitically among the three countries. There's proximity between Russia and China that also puts a question on what role India plays at the SCO meet when it comes to Russia and China. But those visuals also a headline everywhere today, a visual and a video that everyone, especially the US, will be watching closely. Aditya, coming back to you, we cannot deny the fact, when you even look at these visuals really, that China is close to Pakistan as well. It has so much of funding in Pakistan. That's one factor that we cannot look away from, even when you look at these visuals of, what we are just kind of quoting as the erstwhile RIC.
Well, that's right. Those visuals have really created international headlines. At the very beginning of the SCO summit, even before the plenary, even before the family photo was taken, just when the leaders went inside, all leaders were huddled across. Three leaders stood out, Putin, Modi, and of course Xi Jinping. All three huddled together, having a friendly banter, talking to each other, smiling faces. And then thereafter, after the family photo, translators and interpreters also came in. So 6 people standing there, 3 global leaders, a powerful image, a strong message to White House and the Western nation that you cannot bully us. You cannot tell us how democracy functions. You cannot tell us how the way the new international order will be. We will be the ones to create that order, and we know how to stand for our own people and create our own independent national foreign policy. So clearly, a very interesting images, a lot of vibrance in that image also. Also the image of Modi and Putin embracing each other. Speaking about the long-lasting friendship, really very interesting imagery coming in from the SCO Vedika. And in that bilateral also, Putin was smiling when Modi said that we are waiting for you. The entire population of India is waiting for you to come to the country very soon for that bilateral meeting. So yes,
all right.
Of course, it is a very interesting newsy day here in China, and perhaps more headlines awaited in the next couple of hours.
Aditya, do stay with me. Dr. Amlan's been waiting very patiently. Dr. Amlan, before I let you go, the key takeaways really that you would, summarize this into in terms of the bilateral meeting between Russian leader and the Indian Prime Minister, and the key takeaways from the SCO from your perspective.
Frankly, I find it sad because what is happening currently with Russia is that Russia is trying to destroy the post-1945 order by destroying a full member of the United Nations, an official non-nuclear weapon state. It's conducting genocide in Ukraine, and it's conducting a neo-imperial, neo-colonial war. And for some reason, that is all unimportant for India. And Ukrainians are nowadays as unhappy about the White House and about Trump as Indians are, because the US is behaving very bizarrely vis-a-vis Russia. And from a Ukrainian point of view, I live in Kiev. This all looks strange, to be frank.
Right, thank you for joining us, Dr. Amlan. I'm now going to take our viewers through some of the most defining images from the SCO summit today. These are the images really that have gone viral on social media as well. Of course, the fifth one here being Tiger and Bear in the Beast. This is, of course, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President together just ahead of the bilateral meeting between the two. That image going viral on social media, of course, at this point. Modi-Putin Xi in a huddle, strategic regrouping. You can see the three leaders from the three largest countries in the world there sharing a light moment, talking together. That huddle really with Narendra Modi having a little laugh there with them going viral as well, because this is the RIC that everyone was talking about, erstwhile RIC. And the question really is, with the tariffs that have doubled down on India, are we going to see some kind of realignment between those countries? And that hug between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin, light moments being shared there, captured on camera between the two leaders. That's another defining image where you see the Russian President and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi walking and talking at the venue of the summit. But there you have Shehbaz Sharif, who is standing by the side, and no, of course, interaction happening with him in that moment. And that handshake again between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President, once again showing and signaling the deep ties between the two countries, and that message going out to the US that those ties will remain and will remain strong despite all the rhetoric that is coming India's way from the White House. All right, we're slipping to a short break. When we come back, we're going to move a bit away from the SCO to Bihar, where that huge opposition rally is expected to take off. Ankit Tyagi will bring us the latest massive show of strength there on your screen.
The markets move fast.
And so should your portfolio. Expert insights, real-time stock picks.
Do I buy Ola? Should I hold ICICI for the long term?
Buy, sell or hold.
The answers you need, straight from the experts.
Callers from India and across the world. Connect live, ask, decide and invest wisely.
Your portfolio, your future. Ask Profit.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I'm the medical officer of this unit, sir.
Good afternoon. So nice to meet you.
Thank you, sir. Same this side, sir.
So this is the firing range.
Yes, sir. This is our firing range, sir.
You handle weapons, right? I've handled weapons. Yeah, हम लोग एक तो shooting में we get to handle weapons.
Yes.
They are not real guns, but they are very similar. So the functioning of it is very similar.
आपने training वगैरह?
मैंने training भी ली है और I own a weapon also, licensed weapon. So I've shot in firing ranges in Mumbai and all. I'm a member also there. Wow. मैम हम ये क्या गन देख रहे हैं?
ये इंसास राइफल है, sir.
So this is Indian made?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And we'll be firing from, sir, AK-203.
Okay.
That is Indian made,
That
sir.
is also Indian
Yes,
made.
sir.
Can I look at the bullets?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. This is the bullet of insas, sir. The bullet will be different for the AK-203, sir.
So I can fire this?
Yes, sir.
But somebody needs to guide me.
जो लिम्बर आपके आदेश पर आप लाइन पोजीशन लेंगे।
अच्छा।
और इसके बाद इसको यहाँ पर आप
सपोर्ट लेंगे। करेक्ट।
लिम्बर आप यहाँ लाइन पोजीशन और बाट और खांडे का मिलाप रखते हुए और आप फोरहैंड ग्रिप पर पकड़ते हुए सीज का अलाइनमेंट करें। बर की आदेश पर आप मैगजीन वेट की अंदर पर घुसाना है।
ओके। आगे सर। हाँ चलिए।
फायर लाइन ऑफ। हाँ लिम्बर ऑफ। फायर भर। चलो सामने टारगेट। अपना टाइम पर 5 राउंड फायर।
If it matters to you, it matters to India, and it matters to me,
India Matters with Shivaru, only on NDTV 24/7.
Presenting the all-knowing, all-powerful Tech Guru.
Whoa. Guru? I'm no guru.
Okay.
I'm just a guy who loves his tech.
A show where the mysteries of megabytes and motherboards shall be unraveled.
Bro, nobody talks like that anymore. This is all about connected ecosystems, EVs and AI that you can use in your daily lives. We aren't talking about time travel yet.
Gadgets tested under extreme conditions.
But why? I review tech for people like you and me. You know what? Let me take it from here.
All right.
Tech isn't that complicated. In fact, it's about making our lives simpler, better, and more fun. That's what we do on Tech 360. Real talk, real reviews, tech that you can actually use. Tech has changed. So should your tech show.
So we'll go in a bulletproof vehicle, which is a make in India bulletproof vehicle. अच्छा ये हिंदुस्तान में बनी। जी। आइए तो आपको लेके चलते हैं। आइए चलिए। तो ये महिंद्रा की गाड़ी है?
जी सर।
और बुलेट प्रूफ है पूरी तरह से? कितने mm की बुलेट रोकती है
ये? 7.62 mm की।
7.62 तक रोक देती है?
जी।
और
Welcome back. Rahul Gandhi's Voters Adhikar Yatra is culminating in Patna today. The Yatra is culminating in the state of Bihar after 3 weeks of protest march. This Yatra started by the Congress MP Rahul Gandhi over the Election Commission survey in Bihar, which according to the opposition was a ploy to steal votes and remove valid voters in Bihar. Joining me live from Patna is Ankit Tyagi. Ankit, this has been a very, very busy morning. We've been covering the SCO, but there has been so much movement happening in Bihar as well with the culmination of this Yatra. It seems to be hot there. I can see you all set to take over this section and tell us more about the implications of this Yatra, what you're seeing around you, and what this means ahead of the big state election. Over to you.
You know, Vasudha, yes, it has been a very hot and humid day, to say the least. But like you were saying, the action, of course, at the SCO summit in China, but the domestic political action could not have heated up more with what is happening behind me. Rahul Gandhi just left a short while back in an open jeep along with Tejasvi Yadav. This Yatra, which started from the Gandhi Maidan, the iconic Gandhi Maidan here in Patna. The culmination of the yatra is taking place at this moment. It's about a 4-kilometer, road show that Rahul Gandhi, along with all the senior leaders of the Congress and the India Gathbandhan, at this moment are conducted on the streets of Patna. It took 17 days, 1,300 kilometers, 25 districts for this yatra to come to Patna. And I asked this question to some Congress leaders: why not a big rally in Gandhi Maidan? And their answer was that, rally at a static place does not create the same impact that Rahul Gandhi being on the streets does. That's what they're aiming for with this culmination yatra. I was thinking about what the Congress party has achieved out of this yatra and the Mahagathbandhan, among the obvious ones. But one thing that I see different from the 2020 election that I covered in the state of Bihar and then the 2024 Lok Sabha election as well, you won't see a big cutout of Rahul Gandhi, a bigger cutout of Rahul Gandhi, even bigger than Tejasvi Yadav in Patna or anywhere in Bihar. What this Vote Adhikar Yatra has done, it has brought the spotlight and focus on Rahul Gandhi. So it does two things in terms of optics and messaging. One, of course, it's trying to galvanize the voters, the cadre of the Mahagathbandhan. And Rahul Gandhi, apart from sending a message to the BJP, saying that they are already on the ground, have hit the ground running as far as this yatra and election campaign in Bihar is concerned, he's also sending a not so subtle message to Lalu Prasad Yadav and Tejasvi Yadav, showing the relevance of the Congress party. And then, of course, it will help him when the negotiation of seats starts as far as the Mahagathbandhan is concerned. The Congress this time, though, is aiming on a smaller number of seats in comparison to last time, but they want important winnable seats. And that's what Rahul Gandhi's yatra would also be sending across as a message as far as their own alliance partner is concerned. When it comes to the BJP or the NDA, the ruling alliance here, despite them coming out and saying that it doesn't matter, but the kind of crowds that this yatra has drawn throughout in the last 17 days will, in fact, force them to tweak their strategies a bit as well. But the challenge for the Congress party is whether they can, convert this galvanization of their cadre into actual votes when it comes to the election day. All those things will be very, very interesting to see. The India Alliance partners are also here, so somewhere on the issue of voter irregularities, SIR and so on and so forth, the opposition is trying to show that they are united even beyond the parliament, and that is what another message this yatra sends across. But I would conclude by saying that while Rahul Gandhi with this yatra seems to be doing the heavy lifting, we will have to wait and see what follows, because at this moment it's just the opposition alliance in the ring at this moment. It's not the no big initiative of the ruling alliance have started yet. So while it may look massive statement, but the real test of this yatra will begin once the opposition also comes into frame, and then they start counter mobilization of people and their cadre Vedika.
Also very quickly, Ankit, we do know that the bilateral meeting between the Prime Minister and the Russian President has ended. Before I go back to that story, what's the sentiment on the ground right now as we speak? Because I want to understand, is this yatra making any impact of sorts ahead of the elections? You've been speaking to people on the ground. What is the sentiment there?
I think whether it makes a difference in the election, we will have to wait and see, because it is still about a couple of months before the real game, at least 1 month before the real campaign start. But I'll ask Momin, he will give you a sense. Take a look at the show of strength, because CPIM has a very strong cadre. There are dhol nagadas, and this is at least sending energy, sending an enthusiastic effort as far as the cadre of the Mahagathbandhan is concerned, whether it's the Congress party or the RJD or the left parties and the VIP, their cadres feel that their leaders are with them on the ground. And that makes a big difference. Apart from that, for the Congress party in Bihar, there are many seats that they have not won in more than 4 decades. There, the cadre of the Congress party, again feels that there is something that they can talk about. This vote adhikar yatra, the way exclusions are happening, something that they can go and talk about. So for the first time, you are seeing that the whole electoral process, they are trying to make that a voting issue rather than the bijli, sadak, pani and all the other issues that you usually see in any election.
Ankit, also the Election Commission coming into focus. While you have this yatra in Patna, you also have the standoff with the Election Commission. I'll keep coming back to you for more, Ankit, because I believe that, like I mentioned earlier, the bilateral meeting between Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin has ended. This meeting lasted for over an hour. Remember, Prime Minister Modi had said at the opening statement ahead of the bilateral meeting that we have been in touch regularly with the Russian president, and it is a special, privileged strategic partnership between the two countries. We have faced difficult challenges together, and Prime Minister Modi even brought up Ukraine with Vladimir Putin. Prime Minister had said we welcome peace efforts. We hope both sides will move forward. Aditya Rajkol back with us from Tianjin. Aditya, the details from the bilateral meet.
So we can confirm here on NDTV first that the bilateral meeting between Putin and Modi has ended. It continued for more than 45 minutes. That's what we are being told. We are also expecting India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri, to give out a statement both on the bilateral meeting between Putin and Modi, and of course also on what happened during the plenary, where Prime Minister very forcefully told the entire SCO grouping about terrorism, about condemnation of terrorism, and how security, connectivity, and opportunity needs to be the highlight of the SCO, and all countries need to come together. But the Modi-Putin meeting, the highlight of the SCO summit, is over now. In that hotel, Prime Minister Modi about to leave that hotel for the airport where he will enplane for India in the India One aircraft of the Prime Minister. So yes, the last engagement of the day for the Prime Minister, the Modi-Putin meeting is over. That's what we can officially confirm right now to the viewers. There will be details that will be laid out. Two major aspects, Vedika, that were discussed in this bilateral meeting. One is the Ukraine crisis, Zelensky's phone call to Modi, and Modi's chat with Putin now on the Ukraine crisis to restore peace. Second, of course, the Trump tariffs and how India and Russia will now enhance their trade, will completely go to the defense cooperation to another level. And of course, there is continuity in the diplomatic ties between Moscow and New Delhi. So more highlights of this in a few minutes from now. But the Modi-Putin bilateral has ended. The last engagement of the Prime Minister in his two-nation-leg tour has concluded now. In a few minutes, Prime Minister will be departing for New Delhi.
Aditya, now that this is the last engagement and the Indian Prime Minister will be leaving shortly for his country, let's just sum up for our viewers the big takeaways from the entire SCO summit.
Well, absolutely. You know, the SCO was initially the headline event of Tianjin here in China. But of course, the highlight has shifted towards India-China bonhomie, the resetting of the ties, and of course, the big Modi-Putin handshake. But the clearest victory in the headline department goes to that visual of the three top leaders of three biggest nations in the world, China, Russia, and India. Xi Jinping, Putin, and Modi coming together in a huddle, in a friendly banter, smiling, talking away, and then the interpreters also joining in. These are images, not just merely we are resilient economies and we know how to chart out our own roadmap for growth, for prosperity of our people. Our national positions are our top priority. And if America can do it, if EU can do it, so can India, China, and Russia. And that's what will pave the way forward for the entire international community towards peace, prosperity, and of course, coming together when economic cooperation is concerned as well. So at the SCO, a big resounding word against the terrorism in the joint declaration. A few minutes ago, we heard the mention of the Pahalgam terror attack as well. A big victory, Vedika, for Indian diplomacy, because last time Pahalgam was not mentioned, it was missing. This time Pahalgam was mentioned. Prime Minister also making a forceful remark against terrorism and for unified cooperation among the SCO members. Embarrassment for Pakistan, but that's okay. They're clearly used to it.
But of course, India will have to be cautious when it comes to the China-Pakistan proximity. We'll talk about that more with Aditya in a couple of moments from now. Slip into a short break. SCO Summit, the big takeaways, the significance, the symbolism, all of that coming up next on Breaking Ground with Vedika.
Hello, Moto.
Moto G96 5G. All eyes on you.
Pulling us into this country.
They argue, I conclude. They deflect, I drill down. This isn't a free-for-all. It's a reckoning. No filler, no fog. Only the facts and where they lead. Every night at 9, the case closes because the buck stops here.
What seems settled for me is unfinished business. So I rewind, I pause, I reflect, I dig until what's buried stands up to be counted. Breaking ground, not just headlines, the meaning behind them. This is Breaking Ground with me, Vedika Sood.
Before we began this episode, Vishnu was walking around this gun right now and having a really good time. Vishnu, the weapons. Let's talk about the weapons right now.
No, I think the weapons are absolutely incredible. And Commodore, why don't you come in on this? This is an upgraded gun mount. Eventually, all of the ships of this class will have this upgraded gun mount. She carries BrahMos missiles, MR SAMs as well. How does this represent one of the most formidable capabilities for ships of this class, not just in the region, but anywhere in the world?
So Vishnu, I would like to highlight one very important aspect in this class of ships, and that is the indigenous fire punch that we pack with us. Yeah. So weapons, sensors are very complex systems, and very few countries across the world have this capability to have very potent and very credible weapon and sensor package. So what the P-17 Alpha class of ship gets to the table is the fact that the larger majority of our weapons are indigenous. They are built, designed and operated and maintained thereafter throughout their life cycle by the companies and the wherewithal of India. And that's a really proud moment for us to have this opportunity and this capability with us that today we showcase. So if we take this, the Super Rapid gun mount, which is there in front of us, an amazingly formidable weapon capable of deploying ammunition across multi-domains for multi-role, multi-tasks. So the SRGM is one of the best weapons in the world, and we proudly host this on board our class of ship. Addition to this is also the BrahMos, which you spoke of. It's proven its mettle, its battle worthiness, and we feel amazingly proud to be today here having this capability with us. Again, an indigenous capability. What you see thereafter is also the integrated rocket launcher. So whilst we are very formidable in the above water warfare, the underwater warfare itself is also a very challenging domain that we face today. And in that also, if you see the package that we have with us, the integrated rocket launchers, 2 of them, they are again indigenous in nature and give us great capability. When I speak of the sensors also, the sonar, it's a Hamsa Mark 3 sonar that we are operating.
Indian sonar.
It's an Indian sonar. So that gives us the immense pride of hosting the entire capability which we are hosting is of indigenous nature. This AK-630 gun that we have, which has got huge firepower, is again something which is indigenous, made in Indian product, very reliable and battle hardened. So I would say over and all, the key takeaway of this platform would be that how we have grown as a navy of
Welcome back to Breaking Ground. While the SCO summit, of course, is our top focus today, I want to start with the new rant against India for its purchase of Russian oil by none other than the trade advisor to the White House, Peter Navarro, who has hit a self-goal, and I'll tell you in a while from now how. Listen in.
Understand why he's getting to bed with Putin and Xi Jinping when he's the biggest democracy in the world. So I would just simply say to the Indian people, please understand what's going on here. You got Brahmins profiteering at the expense of the Indian people. We need that to stop.
Navarro has called India a laundromat for Kremlin. He's called India the Maharaja of tariffs. He's even claimed that this is Modi's war. And now Navarro says Brahmins profiteer at the expense of Indians. Let's be clear. For decades, America has been insulated, too self-focused, too wrapped up in its own interest to see the world as it really is. That ignorance now reeks of arrogance. Your attacks aren't analysis, they're distractions from the SCO summit and from the image of India sitting across the table with Vladimir Putin and other leaders from the global south. Because here's the truth, Mr. Navarro. India engages with Russia, with the West, with the global south, and that's what you call diplomacy, that's what you call leverage, that's called balance. Now, while India builds bridges, you throw insults. While India talks solutions, Washington stumbles into tariff wars. Your own media has, by the way, called it strategic blunder. So say what you want, Mr. Navarro. In the end, your words don't weaken India. They only expose America's insecurity. And if I may, it makes Americans just Google the word Brahmins. All right, we're moving on to the SCO summit, our top focus today, the meeting between the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin has concluded. We have Aditya Rajkor live with us. We also have Gauri joining us live from Tianjin. And we also have our guest with us, who we will go to in a moment from now. But let's start with Aditya. Aditya, the big takeaways from that bilateral meet. It was a meeting not only India and Russia would be watching closely, but the White House as well.
Well, of course, White House is tracking each and every moment of Prime Minister Narendra Modi here, and that is clearly visible from the kind of statements that are coming in from US, from Peter Navarro, for instance, attacking Brahmins of India. Clearly, that clearly indicates that he does not have any advice for Trump. This is the level of frustration that they have, the kind of arrogance that they have, that they are kind of provoking Indians against Americans. We are not going to fall into that trap. But clearly, SCO is a success. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sharing stage with Xi Jinping and Putin, clearly sending out a strong message from the SCO platform to White House, that White House may think what they do about India, about Russia, and about China. But here is a platform of resilience. Here is a bilateral ties between India and China and India and Russia, which are independent of any other, and will continue to boom in the coming days as well. So the bilateral meeting between Putin and Modi is over. In a few minutes from now, we will get more details on that. There will be a statement issued both by India as well as Russia. We will also have Vikram Misri, the Foreign Secretary, release a video and give details of what really transpired in that meeting. These visuals of Putin and Modi walking together, coming out. Modi will be heading out to the airport to leave for New Delhi after concluding a very fruitful and successful visit both to Japan and China. You can see that handshake between Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi taking place here. Very significant visuals coming in of the kind of bonhomie that is shared by both these leaders of India and Russia, clearly charting out a very progressive path both for New Delhi and Moscow. So clearly a lot of headlines still awaited from Vikram Misri, the Indian Foreign Secretary, and the statement that will come out. But I'm sure that White House will be keeping a very close watch on what was discussed on the Ukraine crisis. Were there any commitments made? And apart from that, on the trade front, how will India and Russia take forward the trade, the Russian oil? Because who knows, Trump may decide to put further sanctions on India if India and Russia continue to boom their trade.
Right, Aditya, do stay with me. Gauri Dwivedi also joining me live, and Maximilian Hess, author and fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, London. Maximilian, thank you for joining us your early morning and our afternoon. From where you're sitting, how do you see the events that have unfolded, especially with Russia at the SCO meeting, with those very symbolic photo ops that have taken place with India and China? How does Europe look at this?
Well, thank you for having me. You know, I think that what we see on display yesterday and this morning really shows the ineffectiveness of President Donald Trump's strategy. It is certainly reasonable that the United States and that international coalition partners look to pressure Russia over its unilateral aggression in Ukraine. Sanctions have been introduced on a multilateral basis for the last 3.5 years, but this random lashing out at India over its purchases of Russian oil is an ineffective policy and one that risks being counterproductive because it is pushing India closer to China and Russia. If the West and the United States want to constrain Russian oil exports, they have to work together, put these sanctions on a multilateral basis, target not just India, but other purchasers of Russian oil as well, which include China, but even more traditional Western allies or countries like India in the middle, such as the United Arab Emirates and Turkey that have engaged in this trade. And the fact that the Trump administration is engaging in, frankly, race-baiting language targeting India directively is highly ineffective.
Right, do stay with me. A quick summation really. We're just going to sum up what has been happening at that bilateral meeting and what this means for India and Russia. You can see the warmth despite the hostile targeting by Donald Trump. That's what Maximilian was talking about. Despite those tariffs, a key message, a strong message going out from both those leaders. Bonhomme disregarding Trump's harsh scrutiny at this point, not only Trump's, but his teams as well. We spoke about Navarro right at the top of the show. India-Russia relationship is bulletproof. It goes back decades, and what this proves over and over again, the two leaders meeting, their messages to each other, their calls to each other, is that this relationship is there to stay between the two countries. And of course, the India-Russia defense relationship remains invulnerable despite all that the West has been saying over the last couple of years, trying to even put pressure on India initially when the Ukraine-Russia war broke out to take sides. But of course, India remains multi-aligned. That's something that they have made very clear. Gauri now joining us live from Tianjin. Gauri, some unexpected moments that we've seen through the morning in Tianjin. Of course, that condemnation in terms of the terror attack in Pahalgam. Also, some key moments of Putin and Modi in that car. Take us through all those unexpected moments from this morning.
Some very significant developments, Vedika, took place here in Tianjin, and that really sets the stage for the kind of messaging that is being sent out from the SCO summit. Now, several issues that you raised, let's take them one by one. First and foremost, the SCO summit declaration does clearly mention Pahalgam terror attack in no uncertain terms. That was mentioned. The Prime Minister's SCO comments also focused on counter-terrorism. It focused on terror. It focused on Pahalgam, spoke about Al-Qaeda, and also mentioned how India has been, attacked due to these terror attacks on several occasions and the kind of damage it does on a long-term basis. And the fact that the SCO summit has come out saying that that should be addressed, whether it is the perpetrators and the supporters, or that framing, that phrase is extremely significant, because that's essentially what India has all along been saying, that perpetrators, funders, supporters all need to be brought to justice. That's the phrasing. So that's a huge diplomatic win as far as India is concerned, and that sets the stage for how it sees terror going forward. Those talks with regard to terrorism will be significant. Now, the second important bit that, the bilateral that has just ended, we're putting out those visuals for our viewers who are tuning in right now. The Prime Minister Modi and Vladimir Putin bilateral has ended. The PM is now headed to the airport, Tianjin airport, from where he will plane for New Delhi. Several key aspects that came out of this meeting, and even as we await the formal statements and readouts that are likely one must see the body language here, the way the both leaders addressed each other, my dear friend. And, all those body language and gestures and phrases add up in terms of what it means for the India-Russia relationship. Donald Trump may have started out this year in this presidency, this term, by saying that he wants to bring an end to the war. He wants to isolate Russia. None of that is happening. What is happening is India talking about possibility of ending the Russia-Ukraine war. The Prime Minister mentioned that at the SCO, at the bilateral level, indicating that India may become a player in terms of what could be that peace roadmap and how will that be identified. And I think that's a very significant headline. And as we await for more details that will come out in terms of the India-Russia relationship post the bilateral.
Maximilian, 2 questions for you. I know you have to leave, so I'll make them quick. One, what are the key takeaways for you from this summit, keeping the tariffs in mind from Donald Trump? Because, of course, like I've been saying from the beginning of the show, it's not that the tariffs came after the SCO summit was, in place, and we're seeing the visuals from there. All right, I'm going to come back to you in a moment from now, Maximilian. That's the Indian Prime Minister leaving for India after that SCO summit in Tianjin. His first stop was Japan. The second stop, of course, was Tianjin in China. All smiles, waving at the people and leaving for New Delhi from the airport. He's got with him a huge diplomatic win for India, which is the condemnation by the SCO members. Gauri is still with us. Gauri, the big breakthrough really for us, which we weren't expecting, is a consensus from the members of the SCO on terrorism and what they had to say about the terror attack in April in India.
Indeed, that's the big win for India, for Indian diplomacy here at the SCO. Prime Minister Modi now in planes for India. Those are live visuals that we are putting out for our viewers tuning in. That also means Prime Minister Modi wraps up his 2-nation tour. There was also a very successful Japan tour ahead of China, where there was a lot of focus in terms of both trade and building in terms of the investments from Japan, and with regard to several aligned geopolitical objectives. That was phase 1, leg 1 of the Prime Minister's tour. And now as he emplanes from SCO here in Tianjin, India also has a very important and a very significant message from the SCO, where the declaration strongly condemns as far as Pahalgam is concerned, and also puts the roadmap as to how should terrorism be handled. And I think that's equally significant as the big takeaway as far as the SCO summit is concerned. Also the messaging, let's also tell that to our viewers, Vedika, today was also about those big optics of the 3 leaders coming together. There may be unofficial exchange of greetings and an exchange of words, but the messaging that came out with the president, the 2 presidents, along with Prime Minister Modi there, I think that's another key takeaway of the SCO summit.
Gauri, I'm going to come back to you in a moment from now. Maximilian still with us from London. Maximilian, how do you view this meeting or this huddle among the 3 leaders from the world's 3 largest countries, Russia, India and China? Symbolic as it may be, it also sends out a strong message to the White House, to the West, about the bullying that Donald Trump has been attempting with India, with other countries at this point. If not the SCO in particular, this is one image that perhaps the White House will sit up and be watching closely.
Yes, certainly. I think as we were discussed earlier, the pageantry of this image shows the counter-effectiveness of Washington's strategy by trying to act unilaterally. It pushes middle countries more into Russia and China's camps. Now, I would see those as 2 very different camps, but the White House often sees them as one, and having India move closer to that and away from the Quad is clearly against Western interests. That being said, there are natural limits to this partnership, and the SCO remains a sort of talking shop to complain about the West and the United States rather than to actively, effectively agree new policies. And on that, I think Prime Minister Modi is making a clear decision here to react to Trump, but has to remember and will remember that Vladimir Putin himself is not a trustworthy partner. Vladimir Putin, of course, was joined by Imran Khan at the beginning of his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Russia will look to Pakistan if it sees temporary gains to be made there as well. And, of course, what happens in Ukraine and Russia's aggression and stealing that territory, of course, has implications for other boundary disputes and territorial disputes by other countries. So, this is a reaction rather than the building of something new. What remains to be seen is whether Russia, India, and China can find ways to work on that relationship that isn't just complaining about the United States' admittedly short-sighted actions.
Maxwell, even a word on India and China. While you've had the Chinese president come out and talk about how India and China should be friends and not foes, the rivalry should not be a part of the conversations going ahead, there is a huge amount of mistrust between the two nations, especially because of the line of actual control. So even whatever happened at the SCO summit, you've seen those visuals, you've seen those images, India will have to tread with caution in terms of future ties with Beijing.
Certainly, India has to tread with caution over those issues in the line of actual control and the boundary disputes that India and China have. China's increased military activity on that high Tibetan Plateau frontier as well. But what I think India has to keep in mind, and the wider world has to keep in mind, is China is, at least historically, in the last not just 20 years of Vladimir Putin's terms, but the last 50 years, much less likely to invade its neighbors than Russia is. India and China have a competition over a lot of areas of economic interest, a lot of areas of regional influence, but this is the kind of competition that can be done on a peaceful manner, and I think that President Xi of China is at least trying to extend an olive branch there. Again, that doesn't mean he's motivated by any desire to actually solve these issues, but rather to find ways to push back against the United States as well.
Maximilian, Gauri also with us. Gauri, a quick word on the condemnation also that's come through from this SCO summit in terms of all the member states condemning the Pahalgam tragedy and the terror attack that happened there. The irony, of course, is that you had one man in that room as well, the Pakistan Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif.
Not just him, Vedika, there was also the Turkish President Erdogan. Let's not forget the role that Turkey played during Operation Sindoor, the Turkish drones that were supplied to Pakistan. Also the host country. We all know, in fact, that the Deputy Army Chief of India was when he said that Pakistan was the laboratory of Chinese weapons. About 3/4 of Pakistani weapons right now are of Chinese origin. There was complete alignment as far as the intel sharing between the two sides is concerned. And add to it Azerbaijan. So you put all of them together. This is the
watching at the SCO summit. This was a message to the world and, of course, to the perpetrators, funders, supporters of cross-border terror attacks. Let's also not forget, Vedika, this is happening when India has redefined how it now views any act of terror. It is now an act of war, which means that if there will be any terror attack on Indian soil, it will be treated as an act of war, and India will respond appropriately. That has been the new normal, and that's exactly what India's messaging was to the world. Now, that really sets the context of how it sees terrorism as one of the central pieces of any significant bilateral relationship. And that also includes China, which is why there have only been tentative steps forward with regards to the bilateral relationship between India and China, but the contentious issues still remain. Now, put that in context with what the SCO statement is, and you put that together and you realize that as far as the India-China relationship is concerned, the bilateral had all the correct optics, even though the cautious nature continues on both sides because of the trust deficit that remains. However, none of that is there with regard to Russia. The Russia-India relationship is now thriving, robust, and which is why the body language is also completely different. You have the two leaders being at ease with each other, speaking, joking, patting each other's shoulder, and of course that ride. That ride may be short, but it did give the leaders a chance to speak to each other directly without the delegations on both sides. And that tells you that from here on, whatever may be the official readout that comes out, there is a clear intent on both India and Russian side to continue the momentum that they have received in terms of their relationship. Trade,
defense, even education, Vedika. I think there could be a lot of focus on Russia opening up its universities for Indian students. Indian students are the largest chunk in American universities, but look at the way Donald Trump is treating them. You do not get visas. That's such a big headache right now for parents and for anxious students. Russia could open that avenue for us. And that itself would be a huge, important aspect in terms of people-to-people ties. Add to it the possibility of India goading both sides, Russia and Ukraine, to find a peace roadmap.
Gauri, do stay with me. We also have Maximilian with us. We'll go back to him also in a moment from now. But we didn't expect, and that's something Gauri, Aditya and I have been discussing, that huge condemnation that's come through from the SCO summit on the Pahalgam terror attack. And that started, or rather they came to that after the Indian Prime Minister made this statement on terror at the SCO summit.
और अतिवाद बड़ी चुनौतियां आतंकवाद सिर्फ किसी देश की सुरक्षा ही नहीं बल्कि पूरी मानवता के लिए एक साझा चुनौती है। कोई देश, कोई समाज, कोई नागरिक अपने आप को इससे सुरक्षित नहीं समझ सकता। इसलिए आतंकवाद से लड़ाई में भारत ने एकजुटता पर बल दिया। इसमें एससीओ रेट्स की बहुत महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका रही। इस वर्ष भारत ने ज्वाइंट इंफॉर्मेशन ऑपरेशन को लीड करते हुए अल कायदा और इससे जुड़े आतंकी संगठनों से लड़ने का इनिशिएटिव किया। हमने रेडिकलाइजेशन के विरुद्ध समन्वय बढ़ाने और मिलकर कदम उठाने का भी प्रस्ताव रखा। टेरर फाइनेंसिंग के खिलाफ आवाज उठाई। इसमें मेरे समर्थन के लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। एक्सेलेंसी, भारत पिछले 4 दशकों से निर्मम आतंकवाद का दंश झेल रहा है। कितनी ही माताओं ने अपने बच्चे खोए और कितने बच्चे अनाथ हो गए। हाल ही में हमने पहलगाम में टेररिज्म का बहुत ही घिनौना रूप देखा। यह हमला केवल भारत की अंतरात्मा पर ही आघात नहीं था, यह मानवता में विश्वास रखने वाले हर देश, हर व्यक्ति को खुली चुनौती थी। ऐसे में प्रश्न उठना स्वाभाविक है, क्या कुछ देशों द्वारा आतंकवाद का खुलेआम समर्थन हमें स्वीकार्य हो सकता है? एक्सेलेंसी, हमें स्पष्ट रूप से और एक स्वर में कहना होगा कि आतंकवाद पर कोई भी डबल स्टैंडर्ड स्वीकार्य नहीं होंगे। हमें मिलकर आतंकवाद का हर रंग में, हर रूप में विरोध करना होगा। ये मानवता के प्रति हमारा दायित्व है।
Maximilian Hess still with us, and so is Gauri. Maximilian, before I let you go, my last question to you is, you know, with the tariffs that have been implemented on India, imposed rather on India, US is being seen as an unpredictable partner for India. But even in terms of realignments, in terms of reaching out to other allies and building from there, the reality is it's going to take time for India to do that. So while you see the optics play out, the bottom line is it's not an immediate, you know, turn to the east, in this case, or to the global south that India can manage in the near future.
Well, certainly. India's largest export partner remains the United States. The U.S. is a very deep and important global consumer market, and Donald Trump is imposing these costs not just on the U.S.'s trade partners, but on the U.S. consumer, who is ultimately the one who pays the tariff, and that poses potential economic weakness for the United States. But at the same time, there are huge capital controls in almost all of the countries that make up the so-called BRICS or even the SCO. It is very unlikely that they're able to reach anytime soon truly global alternative economic structures that can replace the U.S.'s role there. But does this further the narrative of U.S. decline and the rise of some other kind of potential and increased multipolarity, at least? Yes, it certainly does.
All right, Maximilian, thank you for joining us this morning, London time. But there is also a tweet coming in from the Indian Prime Minister that is there on your screens. I'm going to read that out. He has said, and I quote Narendra Modi here, concluding a productive visit to China where I attended the SCO summit and interacted with various world leaders. Also emphasized India's stand on key global issues. Thankful to President Xi Jinping, the Chinese government and people for the successful organization of this summit. So the Indian Prime Minister there calling his visit to China both productive as well as successful. Gauri still with us. Gauri, sum up for us the day that has gone by. We've seen the Prime Minister just in plane for New Delhi, but the key takeaways from you on the ground, you've been there covering every aspect of his visit.
Indeed, Vedika, several key aspects that really define SCO Summit 2025. First and foremost, which is that every journalist here in this room, which has about 2,500 to 3,000 journalists, asked about India, asked about India's position, asked about the bilaterals. That just tells you the significance of the messaging in terms of New Delhi's stance and the message that it was sending to the world. So that's the first and biggest takeaway in terms of SCO. The second also was the image that came out with the three leaders together, that is Russian President Vladimir Putin, his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, and Prime Minister Modi. Yes, it was an informal meeting just ahead of the formal heads of state discussion of the SCO summit. But those optics matter. And if you see in terms of diplomacy, not everything has to be written. Whatever is not written in words, in statements, is what you decipher through body language. And those optics really did come out very strongly, suggesting that the three leaders are looking to potentially take this dialogue discussion forward. Whatever may be the format, whatever may be the platform, but the intent itself and the display of that was very significant. Now, the other important bit, the bilateral that has just concluded with President Putin, we put that out as well, the message and the tweet that Prime Minister Modi put out, which is extremely significant, which also spoke about economic partnerships, which included specifics with regarding fertilizers, with regarding several others. And I think that's equally important, that needs to be highlighted, because economic partnership and deepening of that between India and Russia is also going to be extremely significant from our trade exposure point of view, and also diversification of our overall trade outlooks. We already saw last month China had put an unofficial freeze with regards to export of rare earth minerals and fertilizers to India. Yes, that freeze got lifted when Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi was in India, but that freeze was there and it impacted Indian businesses, it impacted India Inc. In the backdrop of that, this meeting and this statement that Prime Minister Modi has put out on social media platform X indicates that those aspects, the trade aspect in terms of India-Russia relationship, is also going to be extremely significant. As far as Tianjin is concerned, if there's one single headline that has to come out of here, Vedika, that will be a collective a condemnation for the Pahalgam terror attack in April 2025, something that did not happen at the defense minister's level and happened at the heads of state level.
Gauri, to Vishnu also, who joins us live from the newsroom. Vishnu, baby steps forward with China because of the mistrust. Obviously, we have taken steps ahead. Expected lines with Russia in terms of the strong partnership between the two countries. You've seen the bonhomie, you've seen the warmth, you've seen that message going out to the US. But would you say the unexpected takeaway really would be the collective condemnation of the terror attack in Pahalgam that stands out as the biggest diplomatic win for India from the summit?
Yeah, absolutely. The mention of Pahalgam over there is very, very important. The fact that the joint communique quite clearly mentions that that the countries as sovereign authorities need to bring to justice those who are responsible for terror. That is very, very important as far as India is concerned. But I do believe another statement that we've seen in the last little while, which is from the Prime Minister, where he talks about the conversation with President Putin, where he refers to the peaceful resolution of the conflict in Ukraine is important because it comes just a few hours after President Putin told the SCO leaders that he thanked China and India for their role in or their suggestion or their belief that the war between Russia and Ukraine must come to an end. This is obviously at a stage when America continues to push very hard for an end to the war. And in as much as that is a critical move, I think Putin's reference to the role of India is important because, India is autonomous. India is, part of a multipolar setup, as it were, and therefore also has a role. And remember, our Prime Minister traveled to Kiev last year. I was there for that visit where, along with the National Security Advisor, the Foreign Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others, after taking a train journey lasting more than 15 odd hours, the Prime Minister was able to tell President Zelensky that, look, please, we are here not to lecture you, but to urge you to bring an end to the war. India's commitment to this is important. The President Zelensky did speak to the Prime Minister as well a couple of days back. That's very, very important. And perhaps there was a message from the Ukrainian President which Prime Minister Modi conveyed to President Putin during that meeting today. So we'll have to see what happens. India is not a small player when it comes to calling for an end of the war in Europe. And that part of that statement, which has been reflected in terms of Prime Minister Modi's tweet, is also quite significant.
Like you said, Zelensky did dial Modi. You also have Vladimir Putin, who's mentioned India in terms of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia as well, and the role that it can play. And you've had the Indian Prime Minister himself even today talk about how India wants peace in that region. So clearly, it seems that there could be an important role that the Indian Prime Minister will play in the coming days, because there has been this repeated statement from all three on India's role there.
Yeah, and remember that Prime Minister Modi has traveled to Russia as well with that same message last year, saying that, look, we've reached out to the Ukrainians, we are reaching out to you, please let's find a political solution to an end to the war. That's the way India has always seen it. Now, the other parts of, the conversation, including with Putin, included discussions on trade, fertilizer, space, security and culture. India has a very important and deep military relationship with Russia. The fact that you had Pete Navarro, the advisor to President Trump, criticize India's continued imports of defense equipment from Russia is something that doesn't sit well in Delhi. There is no explicit mention of India's, oil trade with Russia, but there is no policy whatsoever for India to bring that down, despite what the United States has to say. One would assume that that will continue. So India carrying out what we believe is necessary in our national interest, and I think that is what has been elaborated, in these very warm, cordial ties, and discussions between China, Russia and India.
And the message, Gauri, that goes out not only to the US but the world from the SCO stage today was, despite all the rhetoric coming in from the White House, the relations between India and Russia remain strong.
I think it is rather interesting.
The fact that the messaging that came out where Prime Minister Modi put that message out on social media platform, very clearly saying that message that he had an excellent meeting with President Putin and a whole host of issues were discussed. As Vishnu was saying, Ukraine is one key aspect of that discussion that came up and something that the PM mentioned in his opening comments, and also at the SCO summit as the deliberation as well. There also, India had mentioned Ukraine. So it was clear that Ukraine, in some form or the other, the conflict is likely to feature in those talks. It also indicates that India is now a player in some form as far as identifying a potential peace for a roadmap. Having said that, the other aspects of this meeting, trade being one, is extremely significant. Critical minerals, fertilizers, other aspects, energy security, that was also mentioned, is extremely significant because, yes, you mentioned, Vedika, about the sharp rhetoric coming in from Trump administration. India has been extremely measured in its response and has not responded to those undiplomatic comments coming in from America, the Trump administration. But Will that and did that have a bearing in terms of the discussions that took place between the two leaders? Read out the statement, which clearly talks about energy security being a key area that was discussed and focused when the two leaders met. They met for almost 50 minutes, and a whole host of issues were discussed. And the sense one gets is that defense would be another area where one can see more progress happening going forward. Will that be in the form of defense deals? Will that be in the form of greater defense cooperation? Remains to be seen. India has already spoken about and its intent for building a Sudarshan Chakra. What are the odds of America now playing a great and a significant role in India's Sudarshan Chakra, given the rhetoric that's coming in from Washington?
All right.
That is a key question, which means that Russia is likely to be a very important and significant stakeholder as far as the defense cooperation that India and Russia have.
Gauri and Vishnu, we'll keep coming back to you for more. But before we move on, we just want to once again replay those statements by the Indian Prime Minister ahead of the bilateral meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
कठिन से कठिन परिस्थितियों में भी भारत और रूस हमेशा कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर चले हैं। हमारा करीबी सहयोग न केवल दोनों देशों के लोगों के लिए बल्कि वैश्विक शांति, स्थिरता और समृद्धि के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है। आपको मिलना मतलब एक यादगार मीटिंग भी होती है, बहुत सी चीजों की जानकारियों का आदान प्रदान करने का अवसर मिलता है। हम लगातार संपर्क में रहे हैं। दोनों पक्षों के बीच नियमित रूप से कई उच्च स्तरीय बैठकें भी हुई है। इस वर्ष दिसंबर में हमारी 23वीं समिट के लिए 140 करोड़ भारतीय उत्सुकता पूर्वक आपका इंतजार कर रहे हैं। एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन में चल रहे संघर्ष के विषय में हम लगातार चर्चा करते रहे हैं। हाल में किए गए शांति के सभी प्रयासों का हम स्वागत करते हैं। हम आशा करते हैं कि सभी पक्ष कंस्ट्रक्टिवली आगे बढ़ेंगे। संघर्ष को जल्द से जल्द खत्म करने और स्थायी शांति स्थापित करने का रास्ता खोजना होगा। ये पूरी मानवता की पुकार है।
Alright, big news coming in from New Delhi. It's a big order from the Supreme Court on the Election Commission survey in Bihar. The Supreme Court has extended the deadline for filing the objections. Joining me live is Nupur from New Delhi. Nupur, just take us through the details, and when is the deadline now been moved to?
Well, there's a small correction here. The Supreme Court has not extended the deadline. The Election Commission today itself told the top court that it will be accepting objections and claims from deleted voters beyond September 1 also. So the filing of objections will go on till September 30. That is according to the Election Commission of India. Until the final list is prepared, they will keep accepting objections. So this was the first thing that the Election Commission of India today told the Supreme Court. And noting the same, the top court has in fact now went on to appoint paralegal volunteers. The Supreme Court called the lack of mistrust between Election Commission of India and political parties unfortunate, and now it has appointed its own officers, paralegal volunteers, to help deleted voters in Bihar SIR to come forward and approach the Election Commission of India to make sure that their claims are considered by Election Commission of India before the final list is prepared. So this is a very big development that the Election Commission of India has now itself told the court that it will be accepting all the claims for one deadline. Previously, September 1 was set as a deadline for submitting objections by all the deleted voters. But now Election Commission of India has said that it is an ongoing process and they will keep accepting objections based by deleted voters.
When is the question?
Can you come again?
Nupur, the question also is then, you said that the Election Commission has extended the deadline. They had mentioned this in the court today, but have they said till when they will be accepting these, admissions and applications?
Yes, of course. Till the time the list is published, that is till September 30th, the Election Commission of India said that till the time they are preparing the list, they will keep accepting the objections, and after the list is finalized, they will be considering the objections raised by persons who have been wrongfully deleted or have claims of being voters and electors from those their area. So this is the Election Commission has clarified in the Supreme Court that September 1 is not the only deadline. It is an ongoing process until the time they are coming up with the final list, that is the next month. The voters have time to come forward and approach the Election Commission of India with their claims.
All right, so the Election Commission itself in court today has said that they are extending the deadline for the special intensive revision, the SIR of electoral rolls in poll-bound Bihar. That's a big takeaway from Nupur. Moving now from New Delhi to Patna, where Ankit is. He's in the middle of that mega opposition rally in Patna. Ankit, over to you. Tell us what's happening on the ground, the show of strength there, and what impact this could happen ahead of the state elections there.
You know, let me apologize, Vedika. I was barely able to hear what you were saying because possibly there are jammers here. This is behind me, the Dak Bangla Chauraha, where in Patna, Rahul Gandhi's rally has, in fact, the road show has culminated. They are not allowed to go beyond this. And very soon, Tejasvi Yadav and Rahul Gandhi are going to address the crowd, the people, those who had come here as well. But just coming to the SIR and what the Supreme Court has said today is of very, very, great importance as far as the elections in Bihar are concerned. And the biggest, in fact, headline that I think, or at least that we've been discussing, of course, is the acceptance of Aadhaar beyond the 65 lakh people, those who were initially deleted from the draft roll. Now, Election Commission, the court has very clearly said if the Election Commission does not accept beyond those people as well, then the court is there to hear their grievances, Vedika. So essentially what the court today has done, it has made Aadhaar as the 12th document in the list of the 11 that Election Commission was already accepting, and plus with 65 lakh people now it has been extended to everybody else as well who wants to put out any objections or feels that their name has been left out. This at this moment will have a big resonance as far as people here are concerned. Many of them on the Vote Adhikar Yatra have been speaking about this. The cadres of the Mahagathbandhan have been going village to village, trying to tell people about what they perceive are irregularities as far as the electoral rolls are concerned. And with this order coming in, at least this will be presented as a big victory of this rally as well. We will have to wait and see the political implications of this, whether this yatra itself becomes one of the talking point, a point which sways the votes either this way or that for the Mahagathbandhan or the ruling alliance in Bihar. But at least with the Election Commission, with the Supreme Court saying what it has said, this will come as a big boost for the participants of the Mahagathbandhan and the Voter Adhikar Yatra.
Ankit, if you can hear me, you're in the midst of that rally there. You've been speaking to people on the ground. How much of your conversations with them, or rather their conversations with you, has been about the SIR?
These people, if I speak about the people, those who had come to this rally, let me also clarify, they are, most of them are hardcore cadre, either of the Congress Party, CPIM or the RJD. So for them, there is an understanding of what SIR is and what this whole Voter Adhikar Yatra is. How much of that has percolated among the voters? For that, possibly, I will have to move out once this Yatra culminates here in Patna, move around other places, whether that is something that people have are talking about. And that will also, in a way, Vedika, will give you a sense whether this Yatra has been able to put across its core message as well. Because what they are trying to do, apart from the Bijli, Sadak, Pani and the